Michael Cohen.
Suzanne?
We are here at the Democratic National Convention in Chicago, and the last time there was a Democratic National Convention in person, you were Donald Trump's lawyer.
That's correct. Well, at least the last time that I was free. Talking about 2016.
Yeah. And so people are asking you why you're here. I don't want to be one of those that's asking you why you're here, but so many people are asking you why you're here, so why are you here?
Well, way to ask an original question.
I want to save my good questions for later. Let's warm you up.
Smart move.
Yeah.
I don't get that question. And I guess what they're trying to elicit from me is, what's my party affiliation? All you have to do is look it up. It's actually on the public record. I've been a Democrat virtually my entire life. In 87 and 88, and I'm talking about 1987 and 1988, I worked for Congressman Joe Moakley. I've been a Democrat basically my entire life, up until the point when I was the vice chair of the RNC Finance Committee under Steve Wynn. It was Steve Wynn who demanded that I change my party affiliation to Republican because no Democrat has ever been the vice chair of the RNC as a Democrat as opposed to a Republican. So they switched my party affiliation, and then I switched it back. So why am I here? I'm here to support the candidate who I believe is better for America than the other. And I believe that Kamala Harris and Tim Walz are certainly far better as candidates or as individuals to bring this country forward over the course of the next 4 or 8 years than Donald Trump and Shady Vance.
Shady Vance.
Shady Vance.
So can we talk about J.D. Vance for
Shady?
a second? The vice presidential pick that Donald Trump chose to be on his ticket.
Let's be clear. It was not. It may have been ultimately decided by Trump, but it was chosen by Peter Thiel and Don Jr. From insider sources, I've heard that Trump actually has good political instinct. My understanding is that he really wanted Nikki Haley, but Peter Thiel and Don Jr. convinced him otherwise, convinced him that the smarter move would be to go with Shady Vance.
But is he that easily influenced?
Yeah, I mean, the last person who has Donald's ear controls the brain. So the answer is yes. And Peter Thiel was also controlling more than just the brain. He was controlling the pocketbook.
Donald Trump was a Democrat himself, wasn't he?
And an independent and a Republican once before, ultimately switching parties and then returning to the Republican Party because he was never going to get the Democratic nod.
Is he still deep down a Democrat?
He's nothing. Donald Trump isn't Republican. He's not Democrat. He's not independent. He's Donald Trump. He cares only about Donald Trump, not about a party affiliation, not about party values. He cares about his values. He cares about himself. That's why they're now trying to rebrand the RNC, the Trump Committee.
So speaking of not being a Democrat or being a Democrat, one of the biggest issues this election is on women's reproductive rights.
One of them.
What does Donald Trump actually think about women's reproductive rights?
Personally, I don't think he cares either way. How does it affect him? See, that's the question that you need to ask yourself when you're trying to figure out Donald Trump. How does it affect him? Well, it doesn't. What you do in your household with your reproductive decision making, he doesn't care. I mean, I've often said that Donald Trump wouldn't cross the street to urinate on someone if they're on fire, simply because it means he has to walk across the street. And more importantly, what's the relevance? What's the need for him? It's always about him.
At what point did you start telling these sides of the story? Because I remember when you and I first met, we had long, extensive conversations where you were defending Donald Trump to the teeth, and then it turned out that you were not being honest with me, which came up in court. So at what point did you kind of have your breaking point and decide, you know what, I'm just going to tell it like it is?
So I was the one who actually convinced him to run again in 2015 for the 2016 election. And yes, I wanted to see him win for a multitude of reasons. First and foremost, I actually believed that he had the ability to be a good president. I never
Why?
expected, because it would be a different type of presidency, not one by insiders who have been part of the process and system, because right now, the country, or I should say at that point in time specifically, the country was going through a lot of issues. And I thought somebody, an outsider, like a Donald Trump, could be really good for the economy, could be really good for the country. But in fact, what did we end up learning? That he doesn't care about the country. He doesn't care about anything.
But
And
didn't you always know that?
Not when it came to the country. About other things, yes. But I never thought that he would do the things that he did. I always thought, and many people thought the same thing in our inner circle, that if in fact he won, which was a real long shot, but if in fact that he won, that he would elevate his persona, he would elevate his identity to meet the expectations of the President of the United States, instead of debasing it by taking the presidency of the United States and what that stands for and making it into a knockoff, a cheap knockoff of the Celebrity Apprentice boardroom.
So you were very close to the family.
Yes.
Are there any skeletons in their closet, particularly around women's reproductive rights, that could come out?
Nothing that I'm going to discuss here or there, but the answer is no, I wasn't involved in anything like that.
But do you know if there was
Anything that I know, I don't have facts within which to back it up, and therefore I don't want to speculate, not about something as important and significant as that.
At what point do you think Donald Trump could potentially get to a point where he really starts to lose his footing when it comes to Kamala Harris? Because it's starting to look like he is. I mean, he's usually pretty good when it comes to Biden or when it comes to Hillary Clinton, but there's something about Kamala Harris where he really doesn't have his messaging.
No, but he is completely rocked right now. He doesn't know what to do in order to stop this Herculean momentum that she and Tim Walz have created. And it's driving him absolutely batty.
So how do you know that? As somebody who's known him for so long, what are the indicators to an audience who doesn't know him as intimately as you? What are the indicators of that?
Start with just his tone and the way he carries himself. He's schlepping around. His tone is completely, it's monotone, it's low pitched, there's no energy. Yeah, he doesn't look like, and he's certainly not acting like, the same Donald Trump that we had seen in the past, where there's energy behind it, just regardless of the nonsense that he's spewing. We're talking about just the energy level. And so that's one of the indicators.
So what is it about her?
First of all, she's incredibly bright. She's very articulate. She's got a great smile, and she has a great aura about her, as does Tim Walz. And he cannot figure out what it is that he can say about her to demean her, to lower her, right? His Kamala didn't work. His Kamala, didn't work. All of
they've made T-shirts out of it.
I understand. It's not
No,
resonating.
I'm saying it backfired.
It's-
They've made T-shirt out of it. People love it.
And that's driving him crazy too. Nothing that he's able to say has done any damage to her. In fact, it has just elevated her and made him look like the pathetic, sort of petulant child that he is.
So what's the difference between Kamala Harris and Hillary Clinton then?
Very different. They're two very different people. Hillary Clinton, who is wickedly bright, and if you listen to her speech the other day, I really wish that was the Hillary Clinton that was out there during the campaign. It really wasn't. Regardless.
Well, I was
with
traveling with her when she was running for president, and all of us who covered her when she was Secretary of State were confused as to why she wasn't the same.
Yeah. Well, Hillary Clinton came with her own set of baggage. And I think a lot of it is unfair and unjust, but Donald Trump knew just how to exploit it. In fact, I think Hillary Clinton was the only candidate that Donald Trump could have beaten in 2016. I think anybody else would have absolutely buried him alive. But she came with her own baggage, and he exploited it, which he's very good at.
Is America ready for a woman president?
I think so.
Were
And I
they
think-
ready in 2016?
No, I don't think so.
What's the difference between 2016 and now?
8 years?
What happened over the 8 years that made America be ready
I don't
for
know.
a woman?
I don't know. I just think that people, especially when you take a look at the two choices, the two candidates, I don't think that there is any, I don't think there's any choice. And so they're saying to themselves, could I vote for a woman? Could I vote for a black woman? And I think people are saying, yeah, if the alternative is Donald Trump, yeah, 100%. Despite the fact that if you put the two of them, forgetting the names, just put the two qualifications, the CVs, in front of somebody, it's not even a contest. And I don't think this is going to be a contest either. I think it's going to be a massive blue wave. Massive blue wave. I think the Democrats are going to take back the House, going to control the Senate, and keep the White House.
I want to cross over to foreign policy. So there's a story that Donald Trump allegedly is calling Bibi Netanyahu and telling him not to agree to a ceasefire deal in Gaza. What do you think about that?
And yet Jews are there supporting him, saying that he's good for Israel. Seriously? It's time that they wake up also. Let me be very clear about something. Donald Trump didn't move the embassy because there was some legitimate reason behind it. He did it because Sheldon Adelson paid him to do it. In fact, he paid him so much money that Donald Trump awarded his wife Miriam the Medal of Freedom, which of course in Donald's mind is the same as the Medal of Honor, right? I mean, again, it's just another gigantic gaffe of Donald sticking his foot in his mouth over not knowing the distinction between the two. It is a mistake for Donald Trump to get involved. In fact, I think it's a crime. Donald Trump is acting as if he's the President of the United States or Secretary of State. He's actually interfering in foreign policy. And I don't care that he is the Republican nominee. That doesn't give him the right within which to interfere. And if Bibi Netanyahu is so stupid as to listen to that and to go along with it instead of doing what I personally believe is the single most important thing to get peace talks back, and that's to free the hostages. And Donald Trump is interfering with it the same way that he interfered with trying to get the debt ceiling raised, instead wanting the United States to go into default because he thought it would help his campaign. There's something mentally wrong with this man. It goes further than just being stupid. This goes way beyond stupidity. This just becomes malicious. And just imagine if it was your child. Just imagine, the whole world wants to start seeing peace in the Middle East. But none of that can start until at least the hostages are freed.
Do you have any concerns about Kamala Harris's policies towards Israel?
Listen, I don't exactly know what Kamala's policies are to the T. I really haven't studied
Well, I
them,
mean,
but what I
she's
will...
vice president, so
what
her
I will
policies are the ones that the administration have had so far, right?
No, those are Joe Biden's policies. The fact is she's the vice president, she will go along and she will do what her boss instructs her to, like every vice president. What she ends up doing, tweaking, maybe changing altogether, I don't know. But I tell you one thing for certain. One thing she had said, and you could just Google it and look it up, and I think the first article that constantly pops up is The Guardian. Kamala Harris's words verbatim, my commitment to Israel is ironclad. What does that mean to you? What should that mean to everybody? Her position as far as Israel is ironclad.
But she didn't show up for Bibi Netanyahu's speech in Congress.
So what? So what? She met with him days after. Protocol didn't even require her to. This wasn't her meeting. He was addressing Congress. And truth be told, for what reason? For what reason? How about, why don't you stay somewhere outside of Congress, and why don't you talk to the powers that be, whether it's the United States, whether it's Qatar, whether it's Saudi Arabia, whether it's Iran, whoever it might be, to help to do once again the single most important issue to get this peace process back on track, and that is to free the hostages. Plain and simple. Free the hostages. And let's get a peace process started.
So what's the first thing you're going to do when you're elected to Congress as a representative from New York?
Well, I got 2 years for that because right after November, the election, I'm going full force, and I'm going to run for Jerry Nadler's seat, District 12, my home district for the last, 30 years. I want to concentrate on my district. You see, that's the problem with Nadler. He's not there to make government policy. He's there to represent his constituents, something he fails to do time and time again. I mean, you cannot drive down any street from First Avenue all the way to the West Side Highway without popping a tire because the streets are completely...
They really are terrible.
Are really, really
They
terrible.
really
And then
are.
on top of that, what's his big move? Oh my God, congestion pricing, putting those gigantic booms across the roadways so that you can
Hasn't
charge...
really worked in London, I have to say.
I don't think so. But worse than that, you're taxing city residents who already pay city, state, and federal taxes, the highest in the country. Why do you think so many billionaires ran out of New York to go to relocate to Florida, which only has federal, no state and no city tax? For them to save money and to put more money in their pockets.
Yeah.
So now you can't figure out another way to rip off New York City residents. So now you want to come up with, congestion pricing. We're doing it for you? I don't think so.
And finally, do you think it's possible for you and Donald Trump to eventually bury the hatchet? Because you really did have quite an era together.
And I had stated when I was testifying during that 25 hours of trial, I testified and they asked me, yes, I had tremendous affection for him. We were very close. We were very close friends, despite the fact that I was also an employee.
Yeah.
And it's really difficult based upon the fact that the man coordinated an unconstitutional remand of me back to prison, putting my life in jeopardy because of my comorbidities. He sent me back to an institution where I was placed in solitary confinement for another 16 days, totaling 51 days of solitary confinement, because I intended to publish a book, because I refused to waive my First Amendment constitutional right, making me the first political prisoner held by my own country, because I wouldn't waive my constitutional right, because I was publishing a book critical of him.
But why was he so afraid of this whole story, especially if, he bragged about being Teflon Don and
Well, that's a question you're going to have to ask him, but
yeah, but
I-
you know
but
him
here's-
very well. So
here's
what
the
was he really afraid of?
All I can do is I can give you my opinion on that. What was he afraid of? Exactly what came out of the book, which is a New York Attorney General case on the overinflation of his assets and the deflation for tax purposes. On top of that, the additional criminal charges regarding the hush money payment, the campaign finance violation, the business record fraud. So I guess actually he was not wrong in not wanting to see it published, but there was definitely other ways that he could have gone about it that would have been less unconstitutional.
Was there any fear of Melania?
By me?
No, by him.
I don't think so. I don't think so. Something that he said many, many times. I'll always find somebody. So I'll find a fourth.
When he was shot, how did you feel? Like, what was your first reaction?
Upset about it.
Did you feel the urge to reach out to him?
Initially, I did. I wanted to ensure that it wasn't more than what we saw. And I was concerned not just because it's Donald Trump, but because there was an assassination attempt on the President of the United States of America. I don't care what party that you're affiliated with. That's just not acceptable in this country. We've been through that before in our history, and I hope to God and I pray to God, regardless of who the person is, I pray that it never happens again. In fact, I hope and I pray to God that no innocent person is ever killed by a bullet.
Speaking of praying to God, I was told that in the immediate aftermath...
I thought you said that was the last question,
All right,
3 full
almost
questions
last
ago.
question. In the immediate aftermath, someone that I know who spoke with him said that it had changed him, the experience had changed him, and he had suddenly turned to prayer and he had turned to God. Is that very different for him?
Yeah, I mean, Donald Trump has no religious affinity at all. This sort of holier than thou attitude, this whole attempted recitation to Corinthians, it's not legitimate. He has no legitimate religious feelings, convictions. In my more than decade relationship with him, I've never seen him go to church. I've never seen him talk biblically or ever quote a psalm, ever. So this newfound religion, I actually thought for a brief moment that as a result of this, an issue like that could certainly change somebody. And I thought maybe it did. I almost at one point in time, and I had said it to my wife, I wonder if he's going to reach out to try to reconcile, to apologize for what he did, and explain why he did it. It's not just an apology. I want an explanation as to why you allowed somebody to whisper in your ear and to follow through with the things that you did to someone like me, someone who fiercely protected you for so long. But he didn't. In fact, 24 hours later, he was right back to being the old Donald.
Well, you never know.
Things happen. Stranger things happen.
And
like the
life-
outcome of the 2016 election.
Well, quite. I mean, I was in the Javits Center with Hillary Clinton. So, yeah. Michael Cohen, thank you
It's
so
good to
much.
see you.